Hey, welcome back. Today I'm going to do this in a bit of a Scottish accent. Not all of it, but you'll see why. Exciting UFO news. The Calvine photograph has been revealed in its full glory, thanks to the top work by Dr. David Clarke from Sheffield Hallam University. My old university. Good one, David. What is the Calvine UFO? Let me explain. At 9 p.m. on the 4th of August 1990, two climbers in the Scottish Highlands saw this. A triangular-shaped craft being followed by a Ministry of Defence jet plane looking very much like a Harrier. This occurred over the Highlands of Scotland. Rather than sending the picture to the MOD, they sent it to the newspaper, who published a story. Well, not exactly. They wrote a story and contacted the Ministry of Defence via this guy, Craig Lindsay, the liaison officer. The Scottish Daily Record's story on the Calvine UFO sighting was pulled by the MOD. The photographs were removed, there was nothing published, and somehow the images of what these two guys saw in the Scottish Highlands was sent to Nick Pope. Nick Pope is the public relations officer at the MOD UFO desk. Nick's department did a study on the Calvine pictures and wrote a report. We'll get back to what's happened to that report in a minute. But Nick Pope himself was so fascinated by this quite amazing Calvine UFO picture, he had it blown up as a poster in his office, where it hung on the wall of the MOD UFO office for years, right? Until something strange happened. And that was, somehow questions were being asked about this place. This is Machrihanish, Britain's Area 51. Is that right? And where I grew up as a child. Definitely, without lying, completely true, US secret test aircraft used Machrihanish because of its geographical position north of Northern Ireland, a direct line across the Atlantic, and a 7-mile long runway with an enormous hangar with refueling possibilities for exotic craft. People in the Campbelltown area saw and heard things. It was a secret test base for aircraft, right? In the 1990s, there were a lot of sightings of triangular-shaped craft, some seen from oil rigs, some seen flying over the Netherlands or Belgium, I think it was. Triangular-shaped craft were in the news. So when this triangular-shaped Calvine object appeared as a photograph, it seemed to confirm that there was something going on. Was it a secret American aircraft that the MOD knew about and were mirroring with their Harrier? Was it a flying saucer from the planet Zog? Or was it a collection of Airfix parts glued together and held up with some fishing wire over the mountain for the photographers? It's hard to say. But one thing is clear to say now that I've seen a very high-res scan, thank you David Clarke, of the original Calvine photograph. It was taken on 1990s black and white 35mm stock. It was at 9 o'clock in the evening. It was probably Tri-X. The grain structure, if you look carefully on the sky, on the wee aircraft, which looks like a Harrier, and on the flying saucer, are all the same. It is almost definitely not a 1990s photographic Photoshop composite. It's a real picture, but is it a real picture of a big object far away, or is it a real picture of a wee object that's really close to the camera? Mick West would understand what I'm saying. You know, perspective is everything. And now I'm going to reveal some interesting secrets from what I think is going on. But first, how did David Clarke get the picture? Well, that's a brilliant bit of research by David. He contacted the MOD liaison officer between the Scottish newspaper and London MOD office. And that was this gentleman, Craig Lindsay, seen here with Professor David Clarke this week in Scotland. Craig had an original print of the UFO made in the 1990s, and it's really good quality. The only other image was a released under the Freedom of Information Act by David Clarke of the Calvine report by the MOD, and it's a terrible black and white photocopy. Here it is. We've all seen this. So now today, thanks to David Clarke's efforts and the MOD man keeping it, we've seen details on the original picture. And that leads me to some big questions. First of all, let's just assume that what we're seeing in the picture is real. And there's a wee aircraft behind the triangular object, and it looks distinctly like a Harrier in Calvine, in the middle of the Scottish Highlands. Where did it come from? That was my question. There are three main Scottish bases: Kinloss, Lossiemouth, and Lookers. None of them really have Harriers. They have Harriers visit, but they don't have Harriers based there. And as a wee pilot, the thing about a Harrier is it's got amazing maneuverability, but very short range. So it came from somewhere local. I suppose it could have been launched off an aircraft carrier, but, you know, maybe we could confirm that. I don't know. And then why would it be a Harrier chasing this object? It would seem more sensible to have one of the first response aircraft, the Typhoons of the day. Maybe even Phantoms were still flying, or even helicopters. But a Harrier is a wee bit weird choice, apart from the fact that a Harrier can hover, go up and down, and we even maybe land in the middle of nowhere. So it's an interesting choice, but where did it come from? That makes it a bit unbelievable to me. Meanwhile, the mystery deepens. During all this hoo-ha about Scotland's RAF bases being used by the Americans for test aircraft, questions were asked in the House by Scottish MPs whether the British MOD were allowing American test aircraft into British airspace. And that question was sent to the American Defense Department, who went ballistic. They absolutely said, do not ask that question, which is really interesting. Shortly afterwards, Nick Pope at the MOD UFO office tells us a really interesting twist. The Calvine poster in his office vanished. Was it because it revealed a true American secret test aircraft or a flying saucer? Or was it just because of this diplomatic row between Britain asking an embarrassing question to the Americans? And, you know, Nick's picture of this UFO, which claims to be an American test aircraft, was a wee bit embarrassing, Nick, but who knows? But very interesting. And this, I think, really confirms there's something weird going on with the Calvine UFO picture, and that is the original MOD report, which should be released about now, coming up soon. If you request it under Freedom of Information, that wonderful David Clarke has done, it is embargoed, it is blocked for publication to the public until 2076. Why? I've no idea. Again, embarrassment or real secret project? My take, here's my personal take on what they photographed, what they saw, and what the thing is. I think that it's a real picture. I think there was a number of triangular craft sightings around about the same time. So that means it is one of these triangular test aircraft, or the photographers faked it using Airfix model kits. It looks a wee bit suspicious to me that it's hanging on a piece of string very close to the camera, but that's the skeptic in me. What I do know, which makes it more interesting, is RAF Machrihanish is real. RAF Machrihanish refueled American test aircraft that had flown across the Atlantic. True. And the original Calvine UFO picture has been embargoed until 2076. So here on your screens is what they originally saw. What do you think it is? The truth is still out there.